And welcome to the Two Unlikely Christians podcast. I'm comedian Pat McCool, coming to you from the stormy pine woods of South Mississippi, and now all the way to the East Coast, up to Bermuda, and then hundreds and hundreds of miles across the Atlantic Ocean. We find esteemed psychotherapist and addiction specialist in London, England, my man Richard Turl. How you doing, Rich?
Yes. Pat Mac, nice to see you, man. I'm doing well, thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. It's been a couple of weeks. We took a little time off.
Yeah, man, a little Christmas break. Yeah, been a nice break this end. Had some nice time off work. Did lots of really nice stuff with the church over the Christmas break. I probably, as a relatively new Christian, got really in touch with what Christmas is really about. Let me put that on silent. Got really in touch with what Christmas is about probably for the first time. So yeah, it was lovely. Yeah, and how
That's
about you?
excellent. Well, for me, it's ironic because that says a lot about what you're saying about being a new Christian. Because I love Christmas. I start looking forward to it around September. But then we get to Christmas, and our last episode was the reason for the season, of course, which was celebrating the birth of Jesus, which I thought we had a good episode upon that. And then we get to the Christmas holidays, which I look forward to all of the time. And then when the holidays actually get here, Richard, they turned out to me, you actually, who didn't have the greatest Christmas growing up, had a wonderful Christmas. It sounds like you and Shireen devoted your time in the church and focused on the important things. I, who am involved in all these Christmassy things, kind of got worn out over the 2 weeks period, and I realized this is what always happens. I look forward to it. I'm thinking I'm going to relax. My last show was the second week in December, so I had a couple of weeks. I was going to relax, enjoy, catch up on some things. And then the season gets here, and all the visiting and the gift givings and the shopping and then I'm worn out once it's over. I'm like, man, I'm glad this is over with because this is actually a kind of a stressful time. And, you got people coming that you love to see. My wife's a clean freak. So I have to, even though it's family, my wife treats it like, representatives from Better Homes and Gardens are showing up. So I'm out there, I'm cleaning stuff up that hadn't been cleaned all year long. And by the time it's over with, it's all worn out. But it was a great time and got to see family. And it looks like y'all had a great time of it. So that's wonderful.
Yeah, it was nice, man. Did you say something? There's some storms over there, some typhoons. What's happening?
Hmm. We don't have typhoons. Typhoons are going to affect um, when you're near oceans. That's more
Ah,
Southeast Asia. So
like
here's
I
what we
would say,
get
like
over
a
here. Yes,
tornadoes.
tornadoes. And tornadoes are probably the most problematic because they just pop up out of nowhere. So, as I mentioned to our listeners, just so they can get a point of reference, I am in these I'm on this lake out in these deep woods outside of Hattiesburg, Mississippi, about 15 to 20 miles, and we're in this old pine forest. One of the biggest industries here is pine. We've had these huge pine trees, these loblolly pine. There's a good chance that the flat you're living in is built from these type pines from these woods, and I'm looking out at 100-year-old pine trees out of my window. I love the history, but the problem is when the rain picks up in storms and we're out in this rural area and there's so much pine, a lot of this is owned by timber companies, and when the wind blows, we get the branches will come off, hit the power lines, boom, we're out of power. So that's why I told you when I first clicked on, if I disappear, we're toast for a couple hours because it takes a minute for the guys do a great job, but there's just so much out here. And we had a drought about 3 years ago, and when you have a drought, these pine beetles get into these trees and it kills the trees. And if you don't take the trees down, which people do on their property, but they don't do out on all these rural roads, so those things are just sitting there rotting. You've got this 90-foot tree, and a little bit of wind comes in, a branch comes off and hits the power line and knocks it out. That's what I worry about the most, is the lack of power. But we do have to, we already had one this morning where my daughter lives 30 minutes down the road. I woke up, warning. I've got to text her. That's what parents do, Richard. You're the guy when if there's storms in the area, you're alerting all the kids and everybody, there's a tornado coming. And the problem with them is they just spin up so fast. A typhoon or a hurricane, it's coming. You've got time to prepare, but a tornado just pops up 5 miles down the road, and the next thing you know, everybody's all gathered up in the storm closet or storm cellar if you have one, which I don't, but I do actually have a closet. But it's died down right now, so I think we are pretty much good to go and ready to get the new year started, man. Like I said,
Yeah, man. Well, in England, we still talk about a hurricane we had in 1987.
I Googled that. You
Yeah,
told me
yeah.
they
It's
had.
true story, man. True story. We still talk about that, So our weather's like there were so many things that can kill you out there, that we don't have over here. Yeah. But look, I'm worried about you, Pat. Have you taken preparations? Have you got the meth lab secured? Is that all
The meth
squared away?
lab is secured. Yeah, you do that
Yeah.
underground.
Okay.
Because you do it underground, because if it blows up, you don't draw as much attention to yourself. You see,
Yeah.
there's a problem with them blowing up out here. So yeah, we kind of dig a hole in the ground. Matter of fact, if a tornado comes, we could turn the meth lab into the
Into the
nice
shelter.
tornado. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, man. That seems
That's
good. I
why
mean, you've gone to the trouble of digging it, so you
That's
might
why
as
you're
well
the
use it.
brains of the outfit. I never
Yeah,
thought
man.
that. I got to go down and tell Gwen we got to get some plywood, and we just go down there in the meth shelter.
Yeah, man. The meth shelter. Yeah.
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 That's what we're gonna call it. Everybody into the meth shelter.
Nice, man. Nice.
So, but I don't think I'll have to run into that this morning. Hopefully, but we do have a little bit of it. But like I said, I am excited about the new year. I'm not a guy that makes New Year's resolutions. I don't know if you are, but I am somebody that tries to make plans to always dramatically improve life, and that's, I think, what we want to do with this podcast this year. We are the Two Unlikely Christians podcast, and one of our main themes is Jesus changed our lives and made it
Hallelujah.
so much better, gave us peace, gave us salvation, gave us joy. But Jesus also directs us to things that can help improve our lives, because we are human beings, and human beings are naturally wired to go the wrong way. And the topic that you have picked today, that I think you were telling me something about it. Now I've looked into it, which I think is a fantastic way to start off 2026, because we want to help transform our listeners and help improve people's lives. And one of the biggest things I think we all deal with is the topic that you wanted to talk about today, and that is anger.
That's
And
it,
did you
Pat.
say you had been on a course, or if you want to just take it from there and then just tell me what you've learned, what you've been looking into?
Yeah, absolutely, Pat. Thanks, man. So I've been doing some work with a colleague called David Wolfson. He's a North London psychotherapist, worked in the field for, I think, coming up on 3 decades. So he's like a real pedigree. He's got some years behind him. A real kind of black belt psychotherapist. Very, I find him extremely impressive and inspiring. And he's developed a like a model. So his outfit, his company's called Anger Planet. But his model, it's basically, it's like making anger your friend, right? So it's like understanding anger, knowing what to do with it in terms of like how to manage it, so it doesn't become like destructive and problematic, because of course it can. Especially when it tips into rage, and anger gets a bad rap. We see anger as a bad thing, but actually it's quite a natural human emotion. And Yeah, so I did, some work with him. I was looking at his model, understanding how he works with people, how he supports people that are experiencing issues with their anger. And yeah, I just thought it's such a great topic to talk about, right? Because when I think about it, then from the Christian lens, through the Christian lens, through from that perspective, I think this is actually something we spoke about not too long ago, Pat. But it's easy to like fall into, or it's been easy for me to fall into, and I've seen other people fall into it. That idea that if we're saved, right, if we've become followers of Jesus, we accept Jesus as our Lord and Savior, we're a new creation, right? Then we shouldn't get angry, and that's definitely not been my experience, right? So I've kind of, and at times I've like berated myself for that, particularly in the early phases of the Christian journey. If I've had this miraculous restoration, redemption, salvation, then why am I still getting angry? And I just thought it was such an important topic to talk about, particularly in that. Um, I don't know how it is for you, Pat, but like over here, like sometimes in church on Sunday, everyone looks so happy and perfect, and it's hallelujah and praise the Lord and waving your hands around, and everything's great. But actually, the other kind of 6 days and 22 hours of a week, things can look quite different for people. And I think it's hard sometimes for people to talk about that. I think, we can create an environment where actually it's quite difficult for people to talk about like their struggles, their shortcomings, their difficulties, and so I just thought, yeah, like, well, when we were messaging in the gap, over Christmas and our last, between our last podcast and this podcast, I just, yeah, it struck me it'd be a really important thing to talk about.
We agree because I think it's one of the biggest things that we all deal with, and I do because I've referenced to you before how people that see me on the outside, and this is really I am a pretty laid back, joyful, happy, jolly person, but for some reason I have with all the peace, all the joy, all the happiness that I have in my life, I've got this festering thing. Remember, I always tell you about the woman at the
At the gas
grocery
station.
at the gas station. But that was just one thing that stuck out in my mind. But I go in and I go shopping, and I'm because I got to make that one pilgrimage to go buy my wife something, and I immediately get in there and you start getting irritated at things. I noticed that over the holidays, my dog was kept waking me up in and you just feel this little festering thing, and we always have, I mean, they're yelling at my dog for something that, if the dog's not behaving, it's because I haven't trained the dog to behave because I'm a horrible trainer. But the point is, I always have some kind of little festering anger, and everybody does. This world is full of it. I just read 2 days ago somebody in the Target parking lot in Savannah, Georgia, shot a guy, a father of three young kids, over a
Wow.
parking space. Just they're arguing over a parking space. And I don't think this guy shoots this guy over this parking space. I think he shoots the guy over this pent up anger that everybody's got kind of bubbling under the surface. If you go on any kind of social media, and it's just amazing that people are always, there's something inside of us that I don't know that if you have learned from what you're studying with your colleague or not. But there's something inside of us, whether you're a Christian, whether you have Jesus inside of you or not. There's something that there's an anger level inside of all of us that's just waiting to pop. I read because I did some research on it, and this one guy that does a lot of research into it, he said, when you pop at little small things, it means you're already running. He said, you already are running that level. You already have this level of anger inside of you, and it's subconscious. It's like in your car when you're driving your car and you're going, 50 miles an hour or 70 kilometers or whatever it is in England. You're at a certain speed, and when you pop that gas, all of a sudden now you're going at a much higher speed. Whereas when you're just starting from the jump and you press the gas pedal, it takes a minute to get up there. And I think one reason why people can pop into a rage so heavily and so quickly is because we have it in us and it's subconscious. Our listeners out there, I guarantee you there are people that may not realize it, but you've got it in you. And I don't know if it comes from childhood. I don't know if it just comes from Satan himself. I don't know if it's just human nature, but there's something that's bubbling in all of us uh, that causes us to be quick to get angered about something.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in that, that idea, like, where does it come from? Well, I think the tricky thing is if we label all anger as coming from the enemy, right, then actually, like, we miss something, because one of the things I've been learning about is how anger's like, it's motivating. It's what drives assertiveness. It's what tells us when our boundaries have been crossed. Yeah. Um, it can be a secondary emotion, right? So,
You
like,
mentioned this before. Go ahead.
what, secondary emotion? Yeah. So, like, it's like, actually, if I start feeling angry and I want to kind of attack, um, actually, what I might be feeling shame. I might be feeling scared. You know, there's other emotions that sit behind it, right? So, anger's a messenger, like, it's telling us things, right? Like, it might be telling us that something's not okay. So there's a lot to it if we allow it to be there. Obviously, like, we know, for those that struggle with anger, which, has been part of my story, for those that struggle with anger and, can tip into rage and attacking others, verbally or indeed physically, right, like, as you've just mentioned, it needs to be, like, controlled, right? But, like, actually, like, there's so much involved in it that if we just, like, fall into that trap of being like, that's the enemy, that's the enemy, then actually, like, this, it's like a part of our, like, human nature that gets missed, right? And then I was thinking about, so I did a little reading myself, Pat, about, like, if we look at anger in the Bible, right, then I'm just putting my notes up. Then actually we can see times when, like, we can see times when Jesus got angry. There were times when he was clearly frustrated. He was angry with the Pharisees. He was angry outside the temple when he flipped the tables. Yeah, with the money, uh, the merchants. Outside the temple. He was angry with them. Right. Um, you can see when he gets frustrated with the disciples. When he's kind of like, there's a bit there's a line that always stands out to me, because sometimes I kind of imagine him saying it to me, at their repeated lack of faith. He's like, "Are you still so dull?" Yeah. There's a bit in it where he in the gospel story where he's kind of like, he's basically saying, like, don't you get it yet? Don't you get it yet? So we see that actually, like, he is angry, right? He gets angry, right? But what he does is he expresses it, and it's not, expresses it in ways that are, like, productive, and, like,
To your
not.
point, in the Bible, because I did a little research, the total mentions in the Bible are for between 300 and 500 times they discuss anger. But there's divine anger and then there's human anger. Now, that divine anger, uh, that refers to God's anger, God's wrath, and that's usually against sin, injustice, uh, unrighteousness. But then human anger is discussed as that's between the destructive, sinful anger and righteous anger, which is a passion against evil or injustice. So there's two entirely different things. And you had mentioned something way back in one of the episodes. You would say, anger's actually good. Anger can all of a sudden make you realize, whoa, wait a minute. There is danger here. There's something here. Someone's actually really trying to do something wrong that could cause me harm or cause me problems. You want to get angry if someone's trying to hurt you, but it's how you handle it, I think, is the key. And there's The anger actually, like I said, I researched it a little bit. Anger actually dulls your thinking and it makes your brain small and inflexible. And this little article said it pulls blood and glucose out of your thinking and it dumps it into your survival circuitry. And then it shrinks your prefrontal cortex and hippocampus, which means you have fewer brain cells, smaller brain, and reduced IQ. Uh, that means when you get anger into a rage, you're actually not as smart. You're actually not thinking as a level head. So the whole thing is to be able to control it and differentiate between what is the righteous anger and what is not. Because we as
Absolutely.
human beings, I know we get angry about so much stuff that's just it's nonsensical, has no impact on us. But what happens when all those things that happen, if you have chronic anger, this little article said it kind of puts your nervous system into thinking that you're in a constant threat scenario. So what you're talking about where the anger is good, because if you really get a threat, but if you're angry all the time, your nervous system thinks that you're constantly under threat.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's what gets you. And also it says it lowers your sensitivity to dopamine. So it actually takes away your opportunity to enjoy life and to have pleasure. So so much of the key is getting a handle on it and differentiating between righteous anger. Is this something that I really have to be angry about? Or am I just angry about somebody took my parking space? Am I angry because the woman cut in front of me at the TJ Maxx? Am I angry because somebody has a different political opinion about me? Am I angry about something silly like they dissed my football team? I always talk about that, but it's a big deal over here. But it's just these little things that people get angry about. Um, that once we learn to get control of it, and I started doing a thing where I just used the word wait. Like, what am I troubled by? Like, why
Oh,
is this
nice.
bothering?
That's nice,
Why?
Pat.
And I've just started telling myself this the second something starts to give me that feeling of anger, because and it also kind of ties in. You remember the laughter doeth good like a medicine episode we did about the macrophages, and when you laugh, the macrophages attack the bacteria, and when you don't, the bacteria, when you're angry or what the bacteria is, I don't think it was just laughter. I think it's just the mood and kind of what you're focusing on. So when you have this anger that's inside of you, it's drawing everything down, and it's also making you, for lack of a better word, dumber. I can remember getting in arguments or debates back in my corporate career or whatever, and the madder I got, the less effective I was. But whenever I'm just calm and I'm just sitting there thinking things through, I can think of rebuttals, points, counterpoints. I'm a lot more effective in everything I'm doing in life, and that goes with your family. That goes with everything that everybody that you're dealing with. So when I just started telling myself, just wait, just that word would pop up, and the acronym was, "What am I troubled by? Why is this bothering me?" Well, if this is real, if this is something that could cause harm or detriment to me or my family, well, I need to deal with this. But if this is just something silly that I'm being emotional about, move on.
Yeah, one of the great questions that was posed by David Wolfson, which is one of the tools he uses, is like, is this going to matter in 5 minutes? You know,
There you go. Okay,
is
well
this going to matter in 5 minutes? You know, and it's such a great leveler. But let me just look at some of my notes, Pat, and just to, I think, bounce off a little bit of what you were saying.
yeah, please do.
So,
And
like,
while you are, but he's right. What he said, that's what I found. Is this going to matter in 5 minutes? I'm sitting here upset about something that means absolutely nothing to my way of life. So anyway, go ahead.
yeah, I mean, this is a really nice way to think about it. Righteous anger is anchored in love and justice. Destructive anger is anchored in ego, fear, or injury. You know, and
Excellent.
then from a psychological perspective, so healthy anger is proportionate, it's time limited, and it leads to clarity or action. Unhealthy anger becomes chronic, fuels rumination and grievance, and justifies aggression or withdrawal. So I think those are really nice distinctions to have. And then I made a note of some scriptures, right? So Mark 3:5, Jesus looked at them in anger, deeply distressed. Proverbs 29:11, a fool gives full vent to his anger. Now I think it's the really important word in that is full. You know, that doesn't say like a fool gives vent to his anger. It says a fool gives full vent to his anger. So it's sort of like talking about that ability to have some level of like kind of discernment and regulation and be able to judge like what's appropriate and what isn't. Um, so I think those are like they're just really important points to consider rather than just throwing it all out. Over here we have an expression like "don't throw the baby out with the bathwater," you know. So it's like that. There's a lot of good like purpose and information and important. It's anger actually serves an important function in our lives. It's not all bad, far from it. Yeah, but it can be destructive if it goes too far, if it's not kind of handled correctly. But without it, then where do we get to? I mean, if you suppress your anger, and one way of doing that can be if you think it by default all anger is a bad thing, so you suppress it and you keep it down, and maybe kind of like just sort of tell yourself that it's okay, it's all right, it doesn't matter, everything's fine. Um, and then that's probably when you end up shooting a guy in the parking lot, over something so small, but not wanting to make light of what happened. Obviously, that sounds terrible. But yeah, that's what I think.
There was a scripture I can't find right now that that I think you had mentioned too. On your notes, when you started saying that, do you remember the very first thing you said that David had said?
Like they'll give it 5 minutes. Is this
Yeah,
going to
but
be
then
important
but
in
then the
five
next
minutes?
thing you
Oh,
said.
well, this is from my notes actually. It makes the distinction like righteous anger. So this is more from a Christian perspective. Righteous anger is anchored in love and justice. Destructive
Yes.
anger is anchored in ego, fear, or injury.
That's it. That's it right there. And I guarantee you that's what causes me, the person who thinks that he's evolved so well in all of my. I'll give myself credit, Richard. Like I was doing the day that I blew up at the lady in the parking lot. But it's anchored in, what did you say? Fear, ego.
Ego, fear, or injury.
Yeah, that's a perfect way, and I think that's that. Like you said, they're on those two extremes. One where you shoot a guy in the parking lot, and the other that I think that our listeners can relate to. Hopefully, nobody's on the verge of shooting anybody in the parking lot. I just think most people have a little bit of. My wife is one of the nicest people, most kindest people you could ever meet. And during the holidays, when we're having all this joy and all this fun, preparing the house and everything, I hear her in there get a little, she's starting to get a little, if something happened and just something kind of she didn't get angry and out, I just heard her in another room. I was like, oh, hey, look, Mother Teresa just, just just kind of got a little hot-headed in there about something. And I think so many of us have that, and I think it really really hurts us and hurts our lives when they're talking about it. Lowers your dopamine, actually keeps you in a bad state that prevents you from having joy, having peace, and
Mm,
having happiness in life. And on scripture, um one of my favorite of all time is Galatians 5:22-23. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self control.
yeah.
And I think that's the key is self control. And you explained it because if you just go, I just shouldn't be angry, I should suppress my anger. I don't think that's the case. If there's somebody out there that has a reason to be angry, at something. It could be something in a marriage. It could be something in business. It could be something. If you ever address it, but don't let it build up. But that fear and that ego, I think that's a subconscious thing that we may carry all the way. I'm always talking about going back to childhood, that we may carry all the way back the child, there's something inside of us that can just cause us to get angry very quickly. And most people aren't going to act on it. But if the person pulls into your parking space and you get mad about it and you're still stewing about it, you're lowering the quality of your life. You're diminishing the fruit of the Holy Spirit that God has given us. That happiness, that peace, and that joy that we should be able to go through life with because we carry it. I've always had a thing that you go out and you encounter 10 people. In the South, how people are very nice and hospitable in the South. You'll encounter 10 people, 9 will be very nice to you. One person will be a, you know what? And that's the person that you think about. When you get, it's like as a comedian, I can go in to have 300 people in a room and they can all be blowing up in laughter. And that one woman on the front row that somebody drugged there that didn't want to, just staring at me. I'm, I'm blocking out all the joy, all the good, all the happiness, and I'm thinking about what is going on with this lady here that's just staring at me and doesn't think that I am the least bit amusing. My point is, it's kind of what we're focusing on. So if we focus on the things that make us angry or let them get to us. When I started doing that, as I said, just telling myself, wait, if I look at something online or just wait. Is that Richard he actually said it best, is this going to matter in 5 minutes? That's the best way, because I use it as an acronym as why am I troubled? In other words, like, is this really going to affect my life in any way? When he's saying, is this going to matter in 5 minutes? Because if it's not going to matter in 5 minutes, it's not going to matter in 50 minutes,
doesn't matter.
5 hours, 5 days. It doesn't matter. You're just sitting there stewing about nothing. And I think that also causes those macrophages that we talked about. It just puts you in different states, and learning how to control your anger. And as you said, differentiate between the two. Are we dealing with righteous anger? Do you have a reason to be angry? Because you mentioned it way back in one of the episodes. You said, well, some anger is good because anger can stop you from letting somebody take advantage of you and harming you. But most of what bothers us is not that. If you got some issue like that, deal with it. But if not, learn to let it go. Did David in his courses give any kind of lessons, any things to learn to help people?
Yeah, absolutely, man. It was like noting what happens in the body, like without judgment, right? So just like recognizing like what's going on. So is it like the chest is like tight? Is it that the guts are churning? What is it that's actually happening in the body? And then also looking at like what we make things mean. So, we all assign meanings to different things, right? So it's like if someone, like say you've just given a good example, right? It's like you got 300 people in a room, 299 of them are laughing. Yeah, they think you're like the best comedian that ever walked the earth, right? And then one of them is sat there. Yeah, just one of them, right? But what you make that mean in that moment potentially is that like that guy, he doesn't think you're funny. Yeah, right. Actually, like, who knows? He might have come with his wife. His wife's dragged him to the comedy show because she thinks it'll be good for him to get out. And actually, he's just lost someone, like, but like what we make things mean, So it's like if I get criticised, for something I've done at home, like I can make that mean something completely different to what it means. I can blow things right up out of proportion, like I get, I don't know, like I haven't performed some household chore in the way that like it could have been done, and what I can make that mean is that I'm not good enough, right? And that like I've failed in some way. And then I might get quite angry about that, but actually what it means is like I just didn't do it in the way that it could have been done, or I missed a bit, But it's what we make things mean. I know earlier in my journey, like I would make, like professionally, if I got something wrong or didn't do it perfectly, I would make it mean all sorts of things about me because I still had so many negative core beliefs about myself, and and a good way to kind of hide from those kind of internal narratives is to get angry, you know. Um, so yeah, it's understanding those kind of narratives, using like some breath, you know, like just breathing. You know, when you start to feel angry, when you notice the guts are churning, when you notice that the narrative started playing, I'm not good enough, they don't think I'm good enough, you know, they're all against me, whatever it might be, you know, let's just breathe. And then actually, and you referenced some like brain stuff earlier, you know, it's like when we're angry like that, our limbic system, so our midbrain, that emotional part of our brain, is really taking over. And that prefrontal cortex, the logical part of our brain, is going offline. Yeah. Um,
This article
and
that I read said to what's
and
happening is it's dumping it into your survival. It's pulling the
yeah,
blood
so
out of
you're
it.
on, so you're on that instinct, you're running on that kind of instinct, right? And actually, breathing is a really good way to actually just to bring that kind of thinking back online. You know, just to fire up the thinking, the logic again. You know, because what will often happen is someone will get angry, they'll do something, say something, break something, hurt themselves, hurt someone else, be that verbally or physically, right? When all of that threat system stuff is happening, you know, like the red lights flashing and the sirens are going, you know. But then, of course, the anger passes, the thinking comes back online, and the thinking says, "Why did you do that?" Like, and then that's the rich breeding ground to then fall into the shame, and then you end up in a cycle, you know, of like, you know, shame, feeling terrible about it, you know, lowering, you know, you lower your opinion of yourself a bit further. Yeah. Reinforce some negative core beliefs about yourself. Yeah. And then the next time something comes that triggers them, they're even more powerful. Blow up, do something you regret, thinking comes back online. See, I really am a piece of shit, you know, and so it goes round, man. Do you know what I mean? So it's finding ways out of that cycle. So yeah, like analysing the narratives, remembering to breathe, being with what is going on physically, and also like start to try and recognise what's going on behind the anger. You know, a lot of the time for me it's shame. You know, like I feel angry. What I'm really feeling is shame. You know. And yeah, it's just so various bits and pieces like that. Another thing David spoke about, which was brilliant actually, was he says he gives his clients, he gives them a magic wand, right? And with this magic wand, right, they can tell the future. And it's like, well, you know, what you're talking about, David, right? And he said, like, basically most things that are going to happen in life, you can actually predict, you know, like you can actually predict that if you go to the to the gas station, sooner or later someone's gonna like, you know, be annoyed sat behind you. Like you can pretty much like know how people are going to respond to things. You know, like if we really think about it, a lot of things that make us angry, often we kind of know that they're going to happen. We can predict 90% of what's going to happen in our lives, like week to week. You know, so it's like what you get, you know, it's entirely possible to get angry about things. Actually, you kind of know, like they're inevitable anyway. Is his point? You know, it's inevitable that some of this stuff's going to happen in life, right? So, like, how much do you want to invest in that? How much do you want to invest in things that actually aren't going to manage 5 minutes later? So, that are just some of examples of his tools, which I thought were just excellent.
Sounds like it. Um, One thing you said earlier that caught my attention because that is what happens when I get angry and I kind of lose it a little bit, not outwardly to other people. I do that. Exactly what you said. You start thinking less of yourself. You start thinking maybe I'm not as far along as I thought I was. You start actually thinking bad. I'm somebody that got you. It's like you almost disrespect yourself. How could I get mad over something like this? What's wrong with me? And that's kind of what I think what he was pointing out. But I think the whole theme of what we're discussing here is that you can control this, and that's what he is saying. That's what his whole course is, I guess, is talking about. What he's
Yeah,
trying to teach people that you can control. In the article that I read, that is one thing they said: take a deep breath and glance around and just change your focus, and then you'll move on, and that will help you realize that whatever you're driving down the road irritated about, or the person in front of you that you think disrespected you. I think in our discussion it's coming out that we're a lot of that is when you're talking about ego, you're feeling disrespected by something. That's day-to-day anger, that you're being disrespected or being rejected. I was laughing when you were talking about the audience because it dawned on me that I'm looking at that woman like that woman's rejecting me instead of going the rest of the room. The rest of the room loves me. At one time after a show, I came out and the guy that was dead staring me the whole time and his wife walked up and told me how much they enjoyed the show. And I'm looking at
Yeah.
this guy. I'm like, do you have facial paralysis? What you had a great way of, but he was like, oh no, it's great. And we ended up talking to the guy for like 15, 20. The guy that's just how he reacted. I personally, in Pat McCool's head, looked at this guy, made a deduction, made a decision, and decided what was going on. This dude don't like me, and it's
Yeah,
bugging
yeah.
me.
He
And
don't
what
like
difference did
me.
it? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
what difference does it make?
What a meaning to assign to something, and it's not even true. You know, I remember I was speaking at an event, like a recovery event, and a friend of mine came to join the meeting, and I just remember this as we sat here, right? And what he did just as I was about to start talking, he tapped his watch from the audience, right? And I remember I was furious, right? Like I was like, what, like, don't talk for too long, like things that you're running late. Like what on earth are you
He put
saying?
a time
Like,
limit on you,
yeah,
Richard. He's
like what? Like and actually when I spoke to him, what he was trying to communicate with me was like, I'm gonna have to go in a minute. I'm sorry if I won't be able to stay for the whole thing. Like, like
right. He was trying to tell you he had run out of time,
yeah, he
and
was
you
trying.
complete. Yeah,
Yeah, he didn't want me just to see him leave, like, and then, of course, wonder why that was. He was trying to let me know something really different. But yeah, funny what we make things mean, Pat, isn't it? But
yeah.
look, great conversation, man. Really
It,
nice to talk
it
through this stuff.
certainly is, and I think one of the things that I think one of the conclusions, couple of conclusions that we hope our listeners can take from this is one: so much of this anger and everything that we have in our mind is something we can control. It's not important. We differentiated between the righteous anger, the real anger, the fear, flight, that type of thing, something you need to deal with. But the most, do I think, what drags joy out of our lives is anger that's just what you just said. You're sitting there getting angry because you assume that person just looked up at Richard and said, hey, bud, certain amount of time because we don't have, whatever you've got to say is probably not that important.
Yeah.
So the point is, we completely assume. As a matter of fact, we can do a whole episode on assuming and how that blows our life up. But I think that there's so much that's just in our heads that causes us to be angry, and a lot of it comes from way back with me being rejected. That person, that's all I'm thinking about. I'm being rejected by somebody. It means nothing whatsoever, and you're having the same experience, and you think somebody's putting a time frame on you. Speaking of the time frame, we're gonna go ahead and wrap things up, but uh, if our listeners would just realize that this is something that you can control. It's something that you can start making a habit of. Because when I started doing that, when I started saying to myself, wait, I am not going to, I just did it for my own happiness. And what he said is it's going to matter in 5 minutes. I think that's a good way to ask yourself that. And this guy also said, take a deep breath, just like David said. Take a deep breath, change your focus, look at something else, picture something else in your mind that's positive, and then it will just go away, and you'd be amazed at how you can transform your day-to-day life and the way you react and you treat other people, because you don't get angry. And a lot of times when you react angrily to somebody, they're going to act angrily back to you. We discussed that, when it comes to relationships. And um, just one Bible verse here that I saw, James 1:19-20. Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger, for the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. And when you focus on the righteousness of God and the love of Jesus and the fruit of the Spirit, you can live a lot more positive, happy, joy-filled life. And that's what we're trying to accomplish here. So, you have any final thoughts there, Rich?
You said it all, Pat, man. You said it all. Yeah, it's just really nice to be able to talk this through. And I really, like you said, I really hope that this helps some people. I really hope this helps some people to not, label um, all anger as like problematic or, of the enemy. So I think that's,
Differentiate
sad.
between, yeah,
It's sad,
differentiate.
hurts people. Yeah, it can
Yeah,
lead to people like just stuffing more stuff inside, and that's not what I'm pretty confident that's not what Jesus would have wanted.
that is not,
So
like you said,
yeah,
the fruit of the Spirit. So, well, great to see you, Rich. We will see you next week. I hope you're off to a great 2026, and all of our listeners are. And we are going to try to have more topics that can help transform you, help you have a more joyful 2026. And I will see you next week, and we will see all of you else out there in a week. And God bless everybody out there, and you too, Rich.
you too, Pat. Bye, everybody.